It started with a knock from inside the wall. That's how I learned my family had been hiding a secret for over 30 years and that I had a sister no one ever told me about. You ever stumble on something you know you weren't supposed to see? Like a memory you didn't live, but once you find it, you feel it crawling under your skin, changing the way you see everything? It started with a knock in the middle of the night. Nothing dramatic. No cops at the door, no mystery phone call, no lightning strike. Just a weird knock, one I only heard because I was home on break from college, sleeping in the guest room, which used to be my grandpa's study. And that night, around 2 a.m., I woke up to this faint knock from inside the wall. Yeah, I know how that sounds. Maybe it was the pipes or a raccoon in the attic. But this knock had a rhythm. 2 knocks. Pause. 1. Then 3 more. I even got up, pressed my ear to the wall, waited, but nothing. Next morning, my mom brushed it off like old house noises. Our family home is in Michigan, built in the 60s, creaky floors, weird heating ducts. I let it go, until it happened again. And again. The 3rd time, I knocked back. That's when I noticed something. Behind the old bookshelf in the corner, the one loaded with my grandpa's old books, there was a faint draft. I swear, it felt like a whisper on my skin. I moved the shelf slightly. It scraped across the floor, revealing a thin line, like the outline of a hidden door. I thought, there's no way. But there it was. I didn't tell anyone. Something about it felt private, like I had stepped onto a thread that unraveled something nobody wanted touched. Over the next few days, I came up with excuses to be alone in the house. On Friday, when my parents went out to dinner, I finally pried it open. It wasn't locked, just stiff with time. Behind it, there was a narrow crawl space. Dust, cobwebs, the smell of old paper. And tucked in the corner, a metal box with a leather strap and a rusted latch. Inside, letters. Dozens of them. They were tied together with string and dated from the late 80s and early 90s. All addressed to someone named Lila. But here's the thing. I'd never heard of a Lila in our family. The handwriting looked oddly familiar too, like my mom's, only more rushed. Emotional. I took the bundle to my room, locked the door, and started reading. First letter I opened was dated 1989. My stomach flipped halfway through. Lila, I held you today. Just for an hour. They told me I'd never see you again after that. But you looked right at me. You have my mother's eyes. I couldn't stop crying when they took you away. I froze. I read more. Each letter told more of the same story. Someone in my family, my mom, I was starting to suspect, had a child before me. A daughter. Given up? Or maybe taken away? But why the hidden room? Why keep these letters? Why not tell anyone? That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, the letters under my bed. At breakfast, I watched my mom closer. Every smile, every sentence. I analyzed it like a detective. She didn't seem like someone with a secret. But isn't that always how it goes? By Sunday, I cracked. I asked her straight up, who's Lila? She went completely still, like time froze around her. What did you say? Lila, I repeated. I found some letters in the crawl space behind Grandpa's old bookshelf. They're addressed to her. Her face turned pale. She whispered, you weren't supposed to find those. And then she stood up, walked away, and locked herself in the bathroom for an hour. After that, everything changed. I waited outside the bathroom door, heart pounding like a drum. I didn't know what I was expecting. Maybe yelling, maybe tears. But the silence was worse. My mom finally came out, her eyes red and puffy, and walked straight past me like I wasn't even there. Dinner that night was quiet. My dad noticed, of course. He asked what was going on. My mom looked at me, then simply said, just tired. I didn't push again. Not that night. But the next morning, I got a message. A single sheet of paper had been slid under my bedroom door. Meet me in the garage. No phones. No signature. But I knew it was from her. I slipped on my hoodie, tucked my phone under my pillow, and headed downstairs. The garage was dark, lit only by a single hanging bulb. My mom stood there, arms crossed, like she was waiting to face something decades overdue. She didn't waste time. She was mine, she said, her voice thin but steady. Lila was my first daughter. I had her when I was 16. I didn't say anything. I just listened. I was still in high school. My parents were strict, religious, proud. When they found out I was pregnant, they nearly lost their minds. They sent me away to live with my aunt in Ohio for the last 6 months. Said it was to avoid shame. I gave birth there, alone, terrified. They told me it was best to put her up for adoption. I didn't even get to hold her for more than an hour. After that, they made me sign papers. They said I'd move on. She paused, wiping her hands on her jeans even though they were clean. I never really did. So why the letters? I asked quietly. I started writing them the year after she was taken. I didn't know if she'd ever see them, but I had to do something. I hid them because, well, your grandpa made it clear that part of my life never happened. He even built that wall himself. I think he wanted to bury the truth, literally. My thoughts were spinning. I had a half-sister out there. Someone who might have grown up thinking she wasn't wanted, while my mom had spent years pouring her heart out into secret letters. Then I asked the question I'd been avoiding. Does Dad know? She looked up sharply. No, he doesn't. I must have looked confused, because she added, I met your father a few years later. I was honest with him about a lot, but not about Lila. I wanted a fresh start. I convinced myself that part of my life was over. I didn't know what to say. Honestly, part of me wanted to be angry, but mostly I just felt sad. For her. For Lila. For all the silence built into the walls of our house. The next few days were weird. We didn't talk much, but something had shifted between us. There was this raw honesty that hadn't been there before. Still, one question kept eating at me. What if Lila was still out there? I started doing some quiet digging. Old records, adoption forums, DNA registry sites. I didn't tell my mom. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. But something in me needed to know. Then, 2 weeks later, I found something. A post on a genealogy site. A woman named L. Sanders from Ohio had posted about trying to find her birth mother. She had a few blurry details. Born in 1989, adopted through a small private agency, birth mother possibly from Michigan. It was a long shot, but I messaged her anyway. Didn't mention names. Just said I might have some information, and asked if she had a scar on her left collarbone. I only knew about it from one of the letters. My mom had mentioned the nurse pointing it out. She replied 2 hours later. Yes, I do. It's small, but I've always had it. Who are you? I stared at my screen. My hands were shaking. I texted her back. I think I'm your brother. She didn't respond for 3 days. I figured maybe it was too much. Or maybe I'd scared her off. But then I got a message that just said, "Can we talk?" We agreed to talk the next evening. Just a phone call. Nothing too intense. My hands were sweating so much, I nearly dropped the phone twice. I didn't even know what I was going to say. How do you talk to someone you've technically known your whole life, but never met? She answered after the second ring. Her voice was soft, cautious. Hello. I swallowed hard. Hey, is this Lila? Yeah, she said slowly. Is this you? We both sort of laughed nervously. It wasn't a funny moment, but I think we were both just trying to survive the weirdness. We talked for over 2 hours that night. She told me about her life, adopted by a couple in Ohio, grew up with 2 brothers, had always felt like something was missing but could never explain it. She only found out she was adopted when she was 17, and it turned her whole world upside down. I always thought maybe my birth mom didn't want me, she said, or that something bad happened. I took a breath and told her about the letters, about the hidden crawl space, about how my mom never forgot her. There was silence on the other end for a few seconds. Letters, she whispered. Yeah, dozens of them. She wrote to you every year. Sometimes more. They're hidden in our house, behind a wall, like something out of a movie. I could hear her sniffle. She was crying. And for a second, I felt guilty for finding them. But mostly I felt like this was supposed to happen. Somehow. Then she asked the one question I'd been dreading. Does she want to meet me? I didn't know. I really didn't. My mom had barely spoken about it since our talk in the garage. But I promised I'd ask. And I did. That same night. She was sitting at the kitchen table, sorting mail like it was any other evening. I sat across from her and said, I talked to Lila. Her hand froze. A letter slipped from her fingers. You did what? She reached out. She wants to talk to you. My mom stared at the table for a long time. I couldn't read her face. Then, finally, she said quietly, I can't. Why not? I'm not the person she thinks I am, she whispered. Not anymore. She deserves better than a scared girl who gave up her baby and then buried the truth for 30 years. You're not that girl anymore, I said. You're her mother. She didn't respond. But 2 days later, she left a note on my desk. Tell her I'll meet her. One time. Just to talk. We met at a little diner halfway between our town and hers. I waited in the car while they went in. I didn't want to intrude, but I watched through the window as they sat across from each other. I couldn't hear what they said, but I saw my mom take Lila's hand. And they both cried. When she came back out, my mom looked different. Lighter, maybe. Like some part of her had been asleep all these years and just woke up. I thought that was the end of it. That they'd meet once, get some closure, and go back to their lives. But that's not how it played out. Over the next month, they started talking more. Then texting. Then calling each other like old friends. And slowly, Lila became part of our lives. I met her again, properly this time. She was smart, funny, a little sarcastic. She looked like my mom but had my grandpa's chin. I started calling her my sister without even thinking about it. My dad still didn't know. That part was tricky. We agreed to wait until the right time. But then, something unexpected happened. Lila asked about our family history. Health stuff. Medical records. She said her doctor had asked about it, just in case. My mom offered to get her whatever she needed. But when we looked through our family medical files, buried in an old file cabinet in the basement, we found something none of us expected. An envelope. Yellowed with age. No stamp, no postmark. Just one name written on the front. Lila. We opened it, assuming it was another letter. But it wasn't. It was a birth certificate. Only, it wasn't the one my mom remembered signing. The mother's name wasn't hers. And the father's name was my grandfather's. I stared at the birth certificate like it had just caught fire in my hands. There was no way it could be real. My mom stood next to me, frozen. Her lips parted like she wanted to say something, but nothing came out. We read it again. The mother's name was Evelyn Moore. That was my mom's cousin. She'd passed away in a car accident when I was a kid. I barely remembered her. The father's name? Raymond Moore. My grandfather. My mom looked like the ground had dropped from under her. That has to be a mistake, she whispered. But the document looked official. Stamped. Dated. It matched Lila's birth date. It was a second version of a certificate, like one had been replaced. Why would there be two? I asked. She didn't answer. We spent the rest of the day digging through boxes, pulling out old files, photo albums, anything that might help us figure it out. I even called my aunt, Evelyn's younger sister, but she claimed she didn't know anything. That night, I couldn't sleep. I felt like I'd torn a curtain open, and behind it was something I should have never seen. The next day, my mom finally broke the silence. I need to tell you something, she said. And you're not going to like it. She sat me down in the living room and held the birth certificate in her hands like it was poison. Evelyn, she was only 15 when she got pregnant. I blinked. She stayed with us that summer, my mom went on, her voice shaking. Her parents thought it'd be better to keep things quiet. She told me something horrible, that it wasn't a boyfriend, that she never agreed to it. I felt cold all over. She said, it was Uncle Ray, I said. My mom didn't speak. She just nodded. That's when I realized why she had raised Lila in secret for 9 months before the adoption. She wasn't just protecting herself. She was protecting Evelyn. She was protecting everyone. I told her I'd help her, she said softly. She was scared out of her mind. My parents, they didn't believe her. They said Evelyn was making it up. But I knew she wasn't. I knew her. I knew the way she looked at him, terrified. So when the time came, I told them I was the one who was pregnant. I took the fall. They sent me away to have the baby. And they arranged the adoption under my name. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So, Lila isn't your daughter. She is, my mom said, tears in her eyes. Maybe not by blood, but I raised her for 9 months. I fed her. I sang to her. I cried the day they took her. She's mine in every way that matters. I sat there stunned. This wasn't just a secret anymore. This was a buried crime. A cover-up. And worse, my grandfather, the man I used to sit on the porch with, the man who taught me how to skip stones, had done something truly unforgivable. The worst part? He was dead. Passed away 5 years earlier. There was no confrontation to be had. No justice. Just the ugly truth, and us sitting in it. Later that night, I told Lila everything. I thought she'd break. I was ready to drive across the state if she needed me. But her response surprised me. I think I always knew I wasn't really wanted, she said. But now, at least I know why. And I know someone cared. Your mom, she gave up everything for me. She saved me. That means more than biology ever could. She was stronger than I was. After that, things changed. My mom and Lila got closer. They didn't hide anymore. Lila even came to Thanksgiving that year. My dad was confused at first, but we eventually told him everything, well, most of it. We left out the darker truth. Some ghosts didn't need to haunt the entire family. But one night, weeks later, I found one last letter hidden at the bottom of that old metal box. It wasn't addressed to Lila. It was addressed to me. The envelope was smaller than the others. Yellowed and creased like it had been handled more than once. On the front, in my mom's handwriting, was my name, just for Ben. No date. No return address. Just those 2 words that somehow felt heavier than the house I was standing in. I opened it slowly, half expecting the contents to change everything again. It was a letter. Just 1 page, front and back. The ink had smudged in places, either from age or tears. Ben. If you're reading this, then I guess the truth finally found a way out. I don't know when you'll find it, or how, but I knew you would one day. And I'm sorry. For all of it. I sat down on my bed and kept reading, heart pounding. You deserve to know everything. Not just about Lila, but about me. About the weight I've carried. I wasn't strong enough to tell you growing up. I wanted to be the kind of mother who gave you a clean slate. But I see now that secrets grow in the dark, and sometimes they grow too big to hide. The next part hit me like a punch. Your grandfather, he wasn't the man you thought he was. He did things none of us could forgive. Not just to Evelyn. Not just once. He hurt people. He manipulated our whole family with silence and control. He made us bury what should have been screamed from rooftops. I'm ashamed to say I let him. I let fear guide me when I should have fought. I had to stop for a second. The room was spinning. Ben, you are not his legacy. You're better. Kinder. More curious than cautious. That's why you found the letters. That's why you had to. Maybe you were meant to. I raised you hoping you'd never know that darkness. But now that you do, I hope you'll carry it with understanding. Not guilt. Not shame. If Lila ever finds you, and I hope one day she does, tell her I never stopped loving her, even if I wasn't her mother by blood. She saved me as much as I tried to save her. I folded the letter back up slowly, trying to catch my breath. My chest was tight, and there was this ache in my throat I couldn't swallow away. This wasn't just a story about a lost sister anymore. This was about how family lies can rot from the inside if they're left buried too long. It was about how a single man's cruelty changed the direction of multiple lives. My mom, Evelyn, Lila, me. I didn't know what to do with that letter at first. I kept it hidden under my mattress for a while, not ready to show it to anyone. I thought about telling Lila, but the words felt too big, too final. But one night, we were sitting on the porch, Lila and I. She was drinking tea, I had a soda. Crickets chirping, wind moving through the trees. Out of nowhere, she said, "Do you ever wonder if things would have been better if none of this had come out?" I looked at her. Her profile was calm, but her voice had that tightness that comes before a storm. I think, I said slowly, they wouldn't have been real. Maybe easier, but not real. And honestly, I'd rather have the truth than a perfect lie. She nodded and smiled a little. Then she said something I'll never forget. You know what's crazy? The first time I met your mom, I didn't feel angry. I felt safe. Like something in my chest had been locked up for years and she just knew the key. I finally told her about the letter. We read it together. And we cried. Weeks passed. Then months. Life didn't magically fix itself, but something shifted. My mom and Lila kept building their relationship, piece by piece. Not as mother and daughter, exactly, but as something honest, something built on truth, not fear. Eventually, my mom gave me permission to scan and send Lila all the letters. Every single one of them. She printed them out and made a little box of her own. For the past, she said, so I can finally look toward the future. And for the first time in a long time, I believed her. Life settled into a strange kind of normal after that. Not perfect, not simple, but honest. Lila started visiting more often, birthdays, holidays, even random weekends just to hang out. She didn't sleep in the guest room anymore. That became her room. My mom put up a little picture of the two of them in there, right by the window. One of those candid shots someone took at Thanksgiving, where neither of them was posing, but both were laughing. We still didn't tell everyone everything. Some truths were ours to keep. My dad knew Lila was part of the family now, and he welcomed her in without too many questions. Maybe part of him sensed it was bigger than we let on, but he never pushed. And my mom, well, she started to smile more. Not that forced, polite kind of smile you give at dinner parties. A real one. Like the weight she'd been dragging behind her for decades had finally been cut loose. But just when I thought the story was done, one more secret came crawling out of the woodwork. Literally. I was cleaning out the attic, something I'd promised to do before heading back to school. The insulation up there was old, the boards uneven, and there were still boxes of things my grandpa had stored away and never tossed. In the far corner, behind an old trunk, I found another loose floorboard. At this point, my curiosity was basically a reflex. I pried it up and found a small wooden box inside. This one wasn't like the others. No dust. No rot. It looked like someone had placed it there carefully, not forgotten at all. Inside, there were photographs. Old ones. Black and white. Some were of my grandpa in his army uniform. Others were stranger pictures of women, most of them young, none of whom I recognized. Some were candid, some posed, all with dates scribbled on the back. The last photo made my stomach twist. It was Evelyn. Young. Probably 14 or 15. And she was standing on our back porch with my grandfather's hand resting on her shoulder. There was a look in her eyes. Not fear, exactly, but something close to it. Something hollow. And tucked beneath that photo, there was a journal. Most of the pages were blank. Except one. If someone ever finds this, I hope you understand. I wasn't the man everyone thought I was. I did things I can and do. But I did love them. In my own way. That doesn't excuse it. Nothing will. I buried what I could, and I tried to raise a family that didn't know what I'd done. I failed. If you're reading this, you've dug too deep. Leave the past buried. Let them live free. No signature. But I knew who wrote it. I put the journal back in the box. Stared at it for a long time. And then I burned it. Not because I wanted to erase the truth, we already had that. But because I didn't want it living above our heads anymore. I didn't want Lila or my mom to stumble on it years from now and feel like the past was still watching them. Sometimes, the truth needs to be exposed. And sometimes, it needs to be laid to rest. That night, I didn't say anything. Just sat outside with Lila and my mom, watching the stars, listening to the wind. For the first time in a long time, we weren't trying to hide from anything. We were just together. And that was enough.